Yeah, and with the vegan, vegetarian crowd, no meat. Meat is bad, especially beef. And I just wonder what those people would think when they're faced with the evidence of that one study that Johnny Bowden mentions in Living the Low Carb Life, where these two researchers were so curious about what beef consumption would do to the human body that they essentially lived in a hospital for an entire year and ate nothing but beefsteak for an entire year.
Wow.
And of course, they both died at the end, but that's beside the point, right?
Right.
No, actually, at the end of the study, drum roll, they were both healthy.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, the guy that did not trim the fat off the beef was the healthiest, and he was fine. There was actually no negative effects from eating beef for a whole year other than sheer boredom, I would imagine.
Right.
It reminds me of the Lewis and Clark expedition when they ended up either in Washington or Oregon, and they essentially ran out of their supplies, and all they really had to eat was elk steak. And in the journals, I was watching, it was on a PBS show, they were basically narrating through the journals with the entries, and one of the guys was like, we have elk for breakfast, we have elk for lunch, elk for dinner. It will be way too soon if I ever see elk again.
Yeah.
But of course, that was a good diet for them too. It's equivalent to like grass-fed beef.
Right.
Elk, wild game meat is especially good for you because of the spectrum of amino acids and the essential fatty acids that are in that. So yeah, one thing that's important to mention with the people that have an axe to grind against low-carb diets and higher fat diets and so forth is they have a certain genetic constitution, and they may be able to eat tons of carbs and never show any external adverse aspects to that, any negative aspects to eating high carbs, at least externally. Internally, they're having higher insulin levels, obviously, by eating a lot more carbs. But it goes to the point that Barry Sears made in his books that there's a spectrum of people that deal with carbohydrates in various ways, and about a quarter of the people out there can eat carbohydrates in abundance and never put on any excess fat. That's about a quarter of the population. On the other end of the continuum, about another quarter will eat carbohydrates and put on a lot of fat as a result of that. And about the middle half will put on some love handles and excess weight the more carbs that they eat. So just because someone is promoting a diet doesn't mean that that diet is healthy because they look healthy. So again, all that extra insulin secretion, what is that doing to your cardiovascular system and your immune system and all these things? So that's an important factor to consider.
Yeah, and we get into that in the book, in the Healthy Mind, Fit Body book. We talk a lot about, the good foods and the bad foods and what makes up a good diet and how you can do that and still enjoy yourself.
Sorting through the fact and the fiction, right?
Exactly. And I was going to say that can be found at healthymindfitbody.com. So we also have a brand new website that we just released a couple days ago. Good place to put your comments in, and you can follow us on Twitter from there, and yeah, all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, it's easier to navigate than the old one, I think, and you can just you can separate the blog from the podcast if you want to read the blogs that we've put in there and the podcast show notes and so forth. And the last few tweets that I did were from a video that I watched by Gary Taubes, and he gets into some of the metabolic factors in obesity, and I think that that lends quite a bit of credibility to the evidence that shows that insulin is the key hormone in fat storage and inability to lose fat. Obviously, if you cut your calories down a certain amount, you will lose something, but if you look at the isocaloric studies that they've done in regard to different macronutrient constitution, you'll see that and these are the ones that Atkins references as well as Barry Sears in the Zone, but you'll see that the low carb, higher fat percentage diets are the ones where the fat comes off faster, significantly more than the ones that have more insulin in the bloodstream. So anyway, the scientific aspects behind good nutrition are really important, but also just as important are the psychological factors and why a person would stick to a diet that isn't good for them. They don't believe there's any other diet that's better than that. That's important to really understand that there is a way of looking at nutrition that is taking into account all of the evidence and trying to falsify all the claims made by all kinds of people, including many who have lots of letters behind their name.
Yeah.
It seems like dietitians and nutritionists and doctors and so forth like to put all those letters behind their name to somehow give them more authority. but the proof is in the pudding and what exactly the facts show on the issue. And is that study a definitive study about the nature of human metabolism? I mean, a lot of the studies have been done on mice, and that really doesn't translate well into humans a lot of the time. I know from my diabetes perspective, mice have been cured of diabetes every which way to Sunday, but humans have not.
Yeah.
So it's important to look at the different, anatomy and physiology of mice and humans and understand that even though a mouse study says this, it doesn't necessarily scale up to humans, right?
Exactly.
So you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I think that should just about wrap up the show. Again, you can download the book at healthymindfitbody.com. Just click on book, and you can go there and purchase a copy. And if you like this show, please go to the show notes for this show and click on the link to iTunes, and you can go ahead and put in a comment and give us a rating.
Yeah, you can rate and review the show. And again, feel free to add comments in the show notes too, so we can get some feedback, because we do like to focus on those three main pillars: nutrition and the motivation factor and the psychological factor, the emotional aspects to that too. So you can get that bonus audio we have on the homepage of the website. Just fill in that little opt-in form. You'll get that bonus audio where we talk about those three pillars concerning achieving your perfect weight through the mind-body connection, because this is a mental process as well as a physiological process.
Exactly.
All right, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, thanks, guys. Talk to you next week.
It's